The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Maynard Bangs presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Bangs.
Be seated.
Oh my God.
I stayed seated the whole time. I'm the judge. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People versus Broken Arrow, a 1996 action movie about a rogue Air Force pilot who steals nuclear warheads, prompting a desperate race against time to prevent catastrophe. For those of you unfamiliar,
that happens.
It happens more often than you think.
They have a term for it.
It's pronounced nuclear.
I think I know. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, you are representing the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Look, I love John Woo as much as the next Schlender, but we need to acknowledge that excessive meddling led to Broken Arrow being a bad movie. Much like Superman 3, there were interesting ideas that would be mined from this movie. So while it's important in the career arc of John Woo, we can recognize that importance with the understanding that it is a bad movie. We will look a lot at the editing, the odd locations, odd characters, poor sense of time. These all play heavily into what makes this movie a frenetic mess. We also have to look at the profound lack of chemistry between, well, you could pick any two characters, really. All these failures were substantive, and we are fortunate to have them because Woo, who is not a hack, learned from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. D-Rok Schlender. Please present your opening statement.
Your Honor, distinguished members of the jury and valued community members listening in. Defending Broken Arrow will be the easiest defensive case I've had since that time I played basketball against that kid in a wheelchair.
No. Now we have to keep that joke.
Thank you. John, the Nature Boy, woo! 1996 action extravaganza is without a doubt a good movie. The plot is more than serviceable with a clear structure. The action is appropriate for this 90s caper, and there are a lot of practical effects that delight the eye. And the movie itself, as alluded to, is indeed an important movie in the Chronicles of Woo. I will prove that not only is the movie good by today's standards, but more than acceptable good by the standards of 1996.
Well, clearly the man with the advantage is Mr. Schlender. But thank you. Mr. Schlender, you may present your first exhibit.
They call me
for the prosecution.
The man with the golden Schlender.
No one calls you that.
They're going to start.
They call me the man with the Slender 5.
Yes, we know. So anyway, look. Look, people of the court. We have the pieces here. Screenwriter Graham Yost coming off of Speed. John Woo coming off of an unfortunate hard target, but he did make some great Chow Yun-fat films in Hong Kong. We can't acknowledge that. So what went wrong? Ultimately, the story could not sustain the kind of frenetic action both writer and director are accustomed to. The desert is just vast and flat, trucks rolling along sand, and frankly, if a nuke goes off in the middle of the desert, that's kind of a win. We're kind of fine. So what are we losing here? We lose Yost's knack for claustrophobia, like we see in Speed, and Woo's ability to deliver punchy, dove-laden action. The result is patently interesting. We never have a good sense of time and place. How long does it take to muster a response to something like this? We see so many helicopters get scrambled. Keep in mind that most Army helicopters can only travel 400 miles, and they are actively searching a desert and need that to get back and forth. So I want to zoom in real quick to wrap up this point. The best microcosm of these problems is the scenes in the mine. Just recall how Travolta and Long were on Slater's butt only to be stymied by a makeshift flared gas grenade. The rest of the timing in the mine is just silly. And thankfully, we only have to watch, I counted, 10 minutes of the 13-minute countdown before the bomb goes off, where we see the characters cover immense, I dare say impossible distances. So here we're given the first lesson Woo would learn from this movie, and that is to stick in your idiom. Military, die-hard action-esque thrillers, no bueno. However, when we see him return to gangsters later on, and cops and law enforcement, that's where he really shines.
Mr. Schlender, if a bomb goes off in the desert and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound?
Yes.
Oh, well.
All right. So there were a couple points there that I would like to discuss. One, you say deserts are very boring. They're flat. It is admittedly for that purpose that they did that, to fly the plane low over the ground to see if the radiation could be detected by the nearby Air Force base. So when you say they mustered, how long does the response take to muster? There was an Air Force base pretty nearby. They actually slowed down their response by saying that the nuclear caseload is leaking when Howie calls in that Oscar-winning performance. He's like,
hey, I'm not here to bash Howie Long.
Where he calls in and he goes, the casing, it's broken. And then they use the razor. As you pointed out when we watched it, I seem to have penchant for dry shaving, but they use the razor to create the static. So that actually slows the response down in time for them to load everything on their Jeep and start driving. You call this Die Hard. I think it reads more of, especially that scene early in the desert, I say that reads more of like their attempt at doing more of a Mad Max style. It's a fast-paced car chase. It's over the top. There's ample use of flame. You know, they have to stop the car because it's overheated and burning, you know, so
it's flame laden.
It is flame laden. They do respond to the fact that, like, okay, now we need to buy some time. They're both heading to the same area because it's the only area in there. The difference, of course, in the mine, I think that's the closest we get to what would have been considered traditional Woo at the time, with Christian Slater pulling out 2 pistols, them using like
a revolver that never runs out of ammo,
inappropriate cover, you know, like they're constantly going behind mine carts and stuff like
jumping away from a grenade that explodes right next to your belly.
Yeah, exactly. Those are more of your traditional, and not just Woo, that is like a lot of 90s.
Your Honor, can I interrupt because I want to go back to the nuclear detection point? Well, that's true. I just want to put out a patina of respect.
Okay, it's an objection then, sure.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought up this idea of like the reason they're in the desert. That's a good reason for doing a military exercise, but we're trying to make an action movie here, right? And they say they slowed down the response because the nukes are out and leaking. But the whole point was they're trying to see if they can even detect the nukes. So they have very sophisticated nuclear detection capabilities. If these nukes were really leaking, that detection capability would have been going off the charts. They even say as much later in the movie. It's like, actually, we're not detecting anything. So the whole point is that they're able to detect nuclear weapons. That's why the stealth craft is being tested.
Right.
But they don't follow through with that. They just take Howie Long's word on it, even though they have the best nuclear detection business in the game.
So to comment on that, the nuclear detection business they're using is experimental. What they need to confirm it was, they said they'll need to get a satellite overhead that can actually do it. The Air Force wasn't allowed to use the satellite because the satellite would pick up the nuclear trail. So one of the things that John Travolta says to buy time is they'll have to get the satellite overhead to verify, and by then we'll already be on the move.
I just don't buy it though, because you already have.
I'm going to sustain it at the cover dial.
I would actually say
they already have
to believe it is secondary to the fact that the movie does have a setup and payoff for it. So you may not like it, but to call it objectively bad based on the principle of like, well, where'd that come from? It came from somewhere.
I'm not saying it can't come from anywhere, but I'm saying it's stupid though. Like, this is people not
Dylan,
doing
movie came out the same year as Eraser and The Rock. 90s movies are stupid.
No, and those movies are brilliant and swingy for something, but we'll talk about those later. My point is they had the capability to confirm all of this, and they chose not to.
No, they
And
chose to.
no,
They just knew it was going to take time from the
I'm
satellite
gonna
to
let
go
the
overhead.
jury decide how stupid
They-
it may
Right.
or
I mean,
may not be.
it is a small point. And then also we have the nuke going off in the mines anyway, which causes an EMP, which in my extensive research on EMPs, it might actually not knock out the electronics of a car or helicopter, even if it was detonated properly. However, what causes an EMP when a nuke goes off is that it's ionizing the air at a certain elevation.
Right.
You want to get an EMP underground.
Oh, devastating.
I mean, I'm kind of willing to let it slide.
I'm not.
But okay, I'll let the jury decide that. But it's just like,
Yeah.
it's a neat idea, but it's like, where's the follow through? Where's the thought on these ideas?
I love when we Mythbuster stuff.
So again,
It reminds me of the fridge case.
So again, the point of the setting off the EMP blast was Travolta knew at some point the military would realize he had lied about the casing leak, and they would scramble their helicopter team to come get it. And he was planning on the
Just one team, mind you, for a missing nuke.
Well, I mean,
One team at a time.
They're the advanced team. You don't keep like you don't keep like a ton of people who have that kind of practical training. You muster you're forced to go out and secure the area, and then you have the bigger guns come in later once you've assessed the situation. You're not going to let's send 20 men into a nuclear wasteland when 5 can be just as efficient. So regardless,
they weren't just as efficient.
No, they weren't just
Howie Long's
efficient
team was pretty
because-
efficient at first.
because
but-
they actually caught up to the team. Remember, their helicopter catches up to the team. It's only when the EMP goes off that science suspect, whatever, John Travolta knew they would be caught. So he had the EMP go off. He told everybody, turn off your electronics because here it comes. And he knew it would take out the helicopter. So he knew that the advanced team would get to him on time. He knew that he would have to buy additional time to complete the mission. And that's why he gambled on the EMP. It was a double thing with the nuke because it showed that they're serious. They're going to set off a nuke. So you better pay up. And also the EMP would help cover their escape trail.
No, I like the idea of setting off the nuke to cover their tracks. That makes perfect sense to me. But what John Travolta wouldn't know is something that's scientifically impossible would happen. You know, so like he's like, "Hey, don't worry, the EMP's gonna knock him out." He's like, "Yeah, but Bosch, the EMP's underground." This Howie Long.
Howie Long. Oh, I don't know.
When we watched the movie, we just gave Howie the dumbest voice for all of his lines. But anyway, we can move on to the next point if you
Please
like.
do.
Okay. So let's move on to the second lesson that John Woo learned during this movie, because it's an important one. And that is how to cast his leads. So he would go on to use Delroy Lindo, John Travolta again, and actually use a lot of these people again, but he'd use them in much stronger roles. I mean, obviously the Face Off is what we're all talking about here, right? But not Christian Slater in Face Off, and for good cause. Look, I love Christian Slater. I'll even do my Christian Slater impression for the rest of the show if you want me to, but I'm not going to do
No.
Nicholson-y.
No.
it. No, okay. Well,
The Nicholson thing is a joke.
yeah, well, if they get Ryan to pop up to say no, it must be
Yeah,
bad.
it was Ben.
Or it must be great. What? No, I think that was Ryan. Who said
It
no?
was Ryan doing his Ben impression.
Oh, very good. He does such a great Ben impression. Anyway, my point is, we see performances from Slater, like 2009's Dolan's Cadillac, where he would actually be very capable of matching and keeping up with John Travolta. But in 1996, he was simply ill-equipped. And to be fair, so was Howie Long. But as I said, I'm not here to bash Howie Long, so we have to make sure we never do 3,000 Miles to Graceland on the show.
Oh, we should.
So apart from no one being able to keep up with Travolta, who was firmly doing his own thing, we see that our two protagonists, Christian Slater and Lady, have no chemistry. And it kind of makes sense because Slater and Samantha Mathis were former lovers in the nighttime. And that explains probably why they can't be friends. Still, Mathis pales in comparisons to other women in this genre. I'd point to Sandra Bullock in Speed, or even Bonnie Bedelia's very understated performance in Die Hard.
Question from the bench. When you say no one can keep up with Travolta, are you complimenting the strength of his performance?
I would say that Travolta isn't acting in a way that's completely different than anyone else. He's bringing an energy to the movie that no one else is. Whether you want to say that's good or bad, I'll leave to the jury. I'm thinking it makes it bad because when no one can keep up with him, it makes all of his scenes a little more jarring. When he's doing the standoff with Howie Long, and this is another problem we have with Travolta's character. And this is why I would be a very good movie villain, because I can never shut up. Travolta could never shut up. He had plenty of times to kill people who were inessential to the plan, and he doesn't do it because he's too busy talking. So that energy ultimately hurts him in the film. But as an actor, as watching this from a technical point of view, it's very jarring and inconsistent.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Schlender about performances.
Oh, good. Let me go on.
Nailed it. As to the point where you're saying like Travolta has the opportunity to kill people and does not, they do establish that part of his reason for doing this is that he constantly feels he's being passed over for positions of power. Right now, he has the ultimate power over life and death, and instead of being just like straight executor,
It's maybe a little big though. The ultimate,
one
bomb.
I have a
he has the ultimate power over life and death of the people in his proximity, at least.
Okay,
So,
of Howie Long.
yeah, and so for him to, you get more of the sense that he's toying with these people as opposed to like he's actually being as nefarious as possible. He's quite intentionally doing like his best to come across as like villainous. It's even to the point where he kills the one guy and he's like, "Would you shut up?" And like he hits the guy in the throat and he's like, "I've never actually killed anyone before. I mean, yeah, I've dropped bombs, but that was different." And he looks over at the dead guy and he goes, "Yeah, I don't see what the big deal is." And he drives away.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see what the big deal is. But then he
had never killed prior to that.
But then here's the thing: he's saying, well, "I don't see what the big deal is." But then he's playing with his food.
Yeah,
The rest of the movie, that
he's
doesn't
crazy.
track. Yeah, I don't think it tracks. I think he kills Samantha Mathis right away. I don't think he makes her push the buttons
I think
at that stage.
Dylan, again, it was.
I think it would have.
Power play.
It would have been much stronger if he had not killed anyone. And Christian Slater has the same character arc. And again, it goes nowhere when he kills the guy. And he's like, "I never killed anyone before." And then he fucking Tarzan's in and kills Howie Long. And
I see it more of like, yes, now he is. Yeah, of course he's playing with his food. He's insane, and he's got all this power. So I don't see that as the negative you do.
I think if they were able to keep it tight with he actually is uncomfortable killing people, like this is something we would see in The Rock with Ed Harris's character. If we gave him just a smidge of dimension, but we don't get it. We're robbed of it. And it is because he just kills the guy and says, "I don't see what the big deal is." And then he's acting strange later. If Christian Slater could have called him out on being impotent, on being too scared to kill, I mean, it doesn't save the movie, but it makes it a little interesting.
Christian Slater would also have no way of knowing that. As far as Christian Slater knows, John Travolta is willing to kill. He set off a nuclear bomb. He doesn't know he's killed the guy in the car. So Christian Slater approaching him and being like, "You don't even have the stones to kill," would make no sense and there'd be no narrative context for it.
Actually, that's true. Christian Slater probably does think he's killed a few people.
Another question from the bench, but does being crazy make Travolta a more effective tactician?
I say being crazy makes Travolta more efficient in this role, and the reason I'll get into that because I view this role as we've discussed it. John Woo learns a lot from this and brings it to Face Off, and I view this as like a prototype of Castor Troy. Like John Woo has an idea for how he wants John Travolta to play a villain. Whether the script in this one, we can say that whether you think this movie is good, bad, in between, doesn't matter. It's no Face Off. Right. So I think exactly. So I think you see Woo and Travolta working together to get him close to the idea of Castor Troy. It's just this movie doesn't provide the same opportunity that a movie like Face Off does. So I see it as a positive because it really let Travolta kind of cut his teeth in this role to get him ready for the bigger role later on. And he's still very entertaining to watch.
That's my point, though, is that it's this bad performance that sets him up for better performances, and not just at Face Off too. I would also point to a mutual favor of mine and Ryan Luis Rodriguez, The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, where he plays a very similar character who is willing to kill, who is very sadistic, but does have that clear like end in mind. Like he does have that clear goal. Like he's actually not crazy. He's just brutally practical. It's a much better character. So we can look to other performances by Travolta.
Those are apples and oranges.
I don't think it is. I think we can look at
New Travolta villains. Well,
I mean, they're completely different styles, and also
no,
like,
but I'm saying,
the scripts are different. Their style is different.
I think the idea is for both characters to be I think those characters are supposed to be a lot more similar on paper than what we end up getting.
And which one came first, though?
Any rebuttals, Mr. Schlender, to that?
I was just going to say, it's 1996. You take a look at the big movies, like The Rock is a good point. Eraser is a good point. You know, those were kind of like the three big movies that summer. All of them are a little wonky. It was just, they're very cheesy. It was the style at the time.
Yeah, but we do have
Like an onion to your belt.
Yeah, no, but we do have, I think, even if we want to look at Eraser, you know, like James Caan is a very similar analog to John Travolta in this, though. We have spoilers for other movies, by the way, everyone. So
yeah, we can spoil any movie we want.
yeah. So not only is Bruce Willis dead, but James Caan is the bad guy in Eraser. So which is
Die Hard?
I know, which is a bit analogous to this, but that's my point, is those movies I think are a little more ambitious and a little more dialed in. And I don't think it's all John Woo's fault, which is really a big crux of my argument here, is there was a lot of studio meddling still, because Hard Target was a hard sell, you know, like it didn't do very well. Like these movies did well commercially, just not well critically. And it wasn't until Woo was able to really get behind the wheel of his career again, like we see with Face Off, where it all comes full circle.
You're not going to win me. I think Travolta's over-the-top acting is fun, appropriate, and enjoyable, especially for the style of movie it is. So you're not going to win me over on that.
Well, I mean, if I
We're going to see what the jury says.
Yeah, we'll see what the jury says.
I speak for the jury.
All right, I am willing to move on to my last point, Your Honor.
Sure.
All right, so my final point, and we've kind of been tap dancing around it here, is just how unambitious this movie is, especially compared to other mid to late 90s action fare. The film lacks the over-the-top nature of something like Con Air or the punchiness of The Rock. The story is so flat. We see action movie tropes executed with very little flair, with the exception of Travolta, to the point of being glaring and distracting. And there are no real twists either. Let's think about that for a second. We're waiting for the other shoe to drop on who the buyers are for the nuclear weapons, where the whole time we were watching, we were speculating who's the inside man. Nothing. We get no payoff on that. The nervous DOD guy, he gets really nothing of substance to do. He's just there filling out time. And get this, filling out time explaining things to the audience we already know. When he says, hey, what if it was Deacon that went rogue? And we're sitting here going, yeah, we're watching the movie. We saw this. Why are you explaining it? We know Deacons went rogue. So all we can do is ask why. The movie never tries to swing for the fences. This is John Woo getting up and bunting, for crying out loud. And so when we couple that with, again, framing this into the lessons John Woo learns from this being a bad movie, that lack of ambition, that is the final lesson John Woo learned from this. And with that, I will rest, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Schlender, do you have any rebuttals to those points? And you can also present.
To the point where you're saying, like, why is this guy telling things we already know? He's not explaining it to us, the audience. He's explaining to other characters in the movie. Otherwise, we would be sitting here complaining, how do they know nobody told them? So
I sustained.
No, we would not.
We find one way to complain no matter what.
We'd be like, nobody out there has a radio to contact Delroy Lindo.
Yeah, but Deacons literally sends a tape saying, hey, it's me, Deacons, I stole the nukes.
Yeah, but that happens later.
Yeah, and then it can happen later when they say, hey, we got a tape from Deacons. Oh, no, this changes everything.
You can show things happening in a sequence. You can have somebody speculate on a possible outcome and explain it to people and say, approach this with caution, which is essentially what he does. And then you can have it confirmed later. It's not a bad thing to have somebody like, well, it's one of the two guys. Let's explore the option if it's the other guy, you know?
Yeah, but it adds nothing of narrative substance to the movie. It's literally just to pad out time. I would have appreciated that time being spent with, oh, I don't know, what is John Woo good at? Is it exposition? No, shootouts. I would have loved to have seen Howie Long have two deagles. You know why? Because Howie Long is jacked and can shoot two deagles.
But to say that there's no point for that character, I just adamantly disagree with you.
I would say there's no substance, there's no value.
The value is that we now no longer have to complain about a scene where characters magically know things they have no way of knowing.
They wouldn't have, there is no magic here. That's why I'm saying Deacons was going to reveal himself. That was the whole point of his plot. They don't need to figure out that it's Deacons earlier.
All right, I'm going to let the jury chew on that.
I say much earlier. It's an hour and 20-minute movie, you know?
Yeah, that's another point. Like, this movie is like about an hour. It's sub 2 hours. So I would say the movie follows a very simple and logical plot structure. You know, our mentor, John, good looking Travolta, is on a mission with his mentee, Christian, I was in Hard Rain Slater, to fly over I've never seen it.
I wanted to for this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not Heather's?
So, we should do Heathers. I love that. It's a good movie. To fly low over the Utah desert with the 2 nukes in the stealth plane to see if the base can pick it up. We've gone over the plot synopsis, right?
Mhm.
So that is your first act. From the opening scene, we have John Travolta and Christian Slater boxing. If you were expecting this movie to be serious, hard-hitting drama, having those 2 boxing set the tone pretty much out the gate, I feel. Also, as we were saying, during the boxing match, John Travolta's telling him things, tactics, which gets set up then and paid off later. It's not like the huge earth-shattering payoff, but it is enough to have like, oh, you mentioned something earlier and it matters later.
Foreshadowing.
So
Yeah,
set up-
no other movie has ever done
No,
this before.
I'm saying, no, this movie at least has the stones to do it. Take a look at how many of these movies in the 90s were doing that. Like Eraser, where's all the setups and payoffs? Like, there are hardly any. You know, like The Rock doesn't have a whole lot going setup and payoff wise. It has like character beats, but in terms of like things that they discuss in modern movies, so let's even bring this into the contemporary thing. How many movies have we seen? We said, what's the point of that if they're never going to use it again? We watch so many.
Almost like
movies.
having a nervous DOD character mention that he's in the RTC and then disappear from the movie.
Characters are allowed to disappear from movies when they have served their purpose. We don't need to keep everybody in the movie. You don't need to keep everyone in a TV show once they've served their purpose. Not everything they do will be as significant as other scenes. It is fine, especially when that third scene is a high-speed train sequence. All right?
Ooh, we
So-
just got trains.
The movie has got 3
Freaking third act trains. the
Third
bane
act
of this
trains.
it's got
thing of prosecutions everywhere.
well, so the movie's essentially 3 acts, right? You have your beginning, your desert, get the nukes, a little bit of Mad Max. Then you have the second act in the mine, which is more traditional woo. There's your firefight. There's most of your gunplay. And then you have the third one. The bomb's on its way to its final destination. It's on a train. Final confrontation happens. There's your 3-act structure, right? This movie is brisk. It is sub 2 hours. How many times have we complained about movies being too long and too hard to follow? You know, most modern movies, they're just over 2 hours long for seemingly no reason. This at least is short, you know, and they cover like I said earlier, they actually cover quite a few plot details. Like, why doesn't the air base send the helicopter right away? It's like, well, they're going to need to use a satellite to confirm it before they send anyone, because there is military protocol. You just don't do things willy-nilly, which is why when Delroy Lindo at the end says, I hope you understand what orders are because I'm about to break one. It's a big moment for his character because he was very much by the book, which worked against him during this whole caper. So at the end, when he's like, let's take a chance on breaking the rules, because clearly they're playing with our playbook. It's supposed to be significant for him.
Any rebuttals to that? You gonna trash Delroy Lindo?
I could trash Delroy Lindo a bit because it doesn't really change when he's like, oh, we're going to start breaking orders and things now. It doesn't really change where we were already at with Christian Slater's character. Like, he was clearly on a mission to go get John Travolta. He was clearly going to go. We all knew this was ending with him boxing John Travolta on the train. We all knew it. And frankly, it just wasn't that interesting. And then we get the very, very strange death scene of John Travolta getting, oh no! And then the nuke hits him in the face.
Mr. Schlender, I'd like you to defend this John Travolta death scene.
It was awesome. What are you talking about? John Travolta took a giant phallic object to the face and it killed him.
I know, we discussed this. Like, John is like, I want you to touch the nuke the way you touched your pool.
Yeah.
Boys.
We can make fun of his questionable sexuality at another date and time. Was that?
We don't need to, but
No, so anyway, kind of circling back, Your Honor, my point was that Slater is so firmly
Right, but he had
on
the
this
resources
trajectory.
He needed Delroy Lindo's resources to get him there fast.
Oh, he would have gotten there anyway.
Yeah.
Does anyone think he like, oh no, I'm not going to get on the train. That's it. I mean, come on.
He had 2 options. He had the DOD guy who was on his side, and he had Delroy Lindo. So he had all the people there who had the authority.
Third option, he could have apparently hidden in plain sight on a boat and gotten there just like the girl did.
Well, she was under a tarp or a jacket.
Hey, Mac, should we check this stuff?
Dylan,
No, he said don't check the tops.
Dylan, I am okay with that because I watched Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he hid Princess Leia under his trench coat, and there were 4 legs. So I've seen stuff that people. This is by far
None of these things have been on trial. I just want to mention The Rock. None of this.
No, but it's important to provide context. I've seen dumber things more recently.
No, I've sustained.
So
As long as we're acknowledging it's dumb.
I mean, it's a 90s film. You know, not all of these action films were swinging for the fences. They didn't. These movies were not made.
The great ones did.
They weren't made
Those
on-
are the ones we've been talking about, though.
So even movies that I really
Like Executive Decision or Air Force One.
okay, those movies are a little long in tooth, and they've got a lot of dead air that could be trimmed, right?
Oh, I know.
Let's-
Air Force One's pretty tight.
Air Force One, I don't think was 96. I want to say it was later. So
That's true, but
so anything that comes
to
out.
be fair, you just talk about 96 helps you more. Me expanding into the mid to late 90s helps me more. That's why I'm doing
But that's
it.
also,
And jury will agree.
but then if you're saying that they can learn their lessons from movies like Broken Arrow to help make them better, well then Broken Arrow is a pretty important movie.
I literally said that in my opening statement.
Yeah, I
That's
know,
an
I know.
important movie, but it's still a bad movie, just like we concluded with Superman 3.
But it is not
Same
a
exact
bad-
idea. They mined good ideas from Superman 3. We still found it guilty. Same idea with Broken Arrow.
Okay.
Good ideas mined,
But it
guilty movie.
is a popcorn movie. This is not supposed to be high cinema. Like I said,
I'm
from
not
the-
saying it's supposed to be high
for-
cinema.
so you have to ask yourself like simple questions. All right. Do you know who the characters are? Yes. Do you know what their motivations are? Absolutely. Yes. He's bad guy, wants a nuke. All right. Can you follow the action sequences? At no point were the action sequences like ridiculously muddy to the point where like I don't even know what's going on.
I would object. The locations are changing
There are
rapidly
3
in the mine.
locations.
No. Well, when they're within the mine, he's like, don't let them get behind. Like, don't let him get back through. And then he's behind them, and then he's ahead of them, and then there's grenades being thrown. The guy pulls 2 grenades. Christian Slater only catches 1 to throw at. Where's the other grenade? You know.
Mistakes made in editing notwithstanding.
There was second grenade.
Mine's
Yeah, remember he goes 1, 2, and then he jumps out. John Travolta shoots him down.
oh yeah, no,
Drop
he doesn't
one grenade.
drop the second grenade, he falls back and explodes with it.
Does he explode? I don't think so.
I don't know, I think he does. It doesn't matter. But by their definition,
That would still be really close to where Christian Slater is because he was close enough to catch the grenade.
These
But
grenades are
regardless-
non-lethal.
Very good.
by their definition,
good
mines are labyrinthine. So to say that like, oh, maybe I don't know his exact look at you still know they're in the mine, you still know they're having a shootout, you still know they can die behind mine carts.
No, by definition, labyrinths are labyrinthian. Mines are very well planned out.
They don't
Not the haunted ones.
regardless, you know the scene takes place in the abandoned mine. So whether you have to follow it specifically beat for beat for beat for beat, maybe they could have done that. Maybe some of it was sacrificed on the editing room floor. More of the stories, we know the shootout's happening in the abandoned mine. They didn't suddenly.
We know it's happening,
no
but the
extra-
editing, we have to acknowledge that the editing is not great. It's not as tight and punchy as we've seen from John Woo's other works, especially his Hong Kong features. And then, of course,
But he
later
had
on.
final say in those Hong Kong.
I'm going to throw this back to Mr. Schlender
Yeah,
for his
please.
next exhibit. I'd like to remind you that those mines were reopened for devil egg production.
That is a joke only few of us will get.
I was listening to an old episode. We make so many jokes we don't do anymore.
All right, and then of course we have to talk about the influence that it had on creating Face Off. Right? You see,
Hell yeah.
you see this quite frankly in a shockingly negative light, where I see it as a quite positive light. So when the movie came out, obviously it received some middling reviews. The biggest, like most vocal complaint amongst it was like, this is the second time you guys haven't let John Woo be John Woo. Now, a lot of people gave credit to, it's like, all right, we know the movie, we know the plot. John Travolta is a lot of fun. John Woo needs to let him like off the chain, right? So those were just the common kind of like reviews consensus around the time, as I recall. And what's important about it is they listen. They go in and they rewrite Face Off, you know, and they start catering towards John Woo more and more. So he is eventually able to take a lot of those ideas that he has in Face Off. And if you think about it, Face Off and Broken Arrow, not that it's completely unique to action movies, they follow very similar like plot structures. They follow very similar like kind of like narrative beats. You know, you set up the emotional stakes between your two antagonists, you know, so Christian Slater is almost like a prototype version of like Sean Archer, and John Travolta, of course, much more prototype Castor Troy. So they start establishing the deep conflict between them, not as deep obviously in Face Off, but we get the point for this $50 million action movie that John Woo put together, you know. There's a few other things that are worthy of note that I would say, like specifically we have and I say it establishes the cat and mouse kind of hunter dynamic that we would see popularly used, the heavy gunplay middle act, and of course, as I said, the high-speed sequence for our finale. The Rock and Eraser came out in '96, and they don't have the same exact plot beats and same exact formula, so it is fair to say that he took from Broken Arrow and brought it to Face Off, and not just what other movies were doing at the time. Now, all three of those movies, fair amount of cheese, as I've discussed. The '90s, full of cheese, and I love cheese. Now, speaking of legacy, I would like to bring in 2 fun facts as we were discussing them the other day. One, the infamous Howie scream. So I feel like that's got to be worth at least a point bump for this movie.
It is.
And then if I may pander specifically to Maynard, we found out that Dewey's theme from Scream 2 is actually one of the themes used in Broken Arrow. So that was a fun little factotum for us as well.
Really great.
So I would say
True, Maynard got really passionate. He goes, I know that's from Scream.
So I would say factoring in something's legacy, as well as how it was like the movies that came out around the same time, like its contemporaries, as well as its legacy, taking both into consideration, I think should have merit in this case. And I think both are, hey, this is a fun movie. Grab some popcorn, turn your brain settings to low, watch John Travolta ham it up. And I think that makes a good movie.
My settings are usually on that by default. Are you resting on that?
Yeah, I guess my final thing to rest on then, if I can just get in like one final thing. I find myself oftentimes thinking now, would I watch this movie again if a friend of mine who had not seen it approached me and said, hey, do you want to watch Broken Arrow with me this weekend? I would say yes. And you know what? That ain't bad.
How about watching it with a friend? All right. Thank you both. All sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Schlender, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, what were the lessons Wu learned? We all agree that Face Off is his American masterstroke, and for good cause. Face Off works in Wu's natural arena, cops and gangsters and sci-fi face switching technology. That's a new one.
Okay.
The action is dialed in and localized. The characters match each other's energy. And it's crazy ambitious. He takes his face off.
Wait, what's that guy? No more drugs for that man.
He learned these lessons through making Broken Arrow. This bad movie had the kernels of ideas that led to one of the best action movies of all time. But that only happens and Face Off only gets made if John Woo realizes Broken Arrow is bad. If he realizes it's not all there yet. Again, just like we established with Superman 3. So remember, gentle jurors, this is indeed an important movie. I won't dispute that. But it is only important because of how bad it was and forcing John Woo to do so much better and escape hackdom. Thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't in the room. What'd that guy say about doing something to his face?
His face off.
You know, the guy says no more drugs for that man. He's the guy who directed The Notebook.
Really?
No.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Mr. Schlender, you may present your closing argument.
Thank you, if I may.
Shut up!
Now, remember how you set that joke up in the beginning of the episode and it paid off at the end of the episode? That's good script writing. And that's what happens in Broken Arrow.
Damn it, I can see. No.
Yeah, all right. So exaggerated storytelling, over-the-top action, suspension of disbelief for the sake of storytelling and action sequences are nothing new to cinema, lest we forget that oxygen tanks don't actually explode when they're shot. So any signs that the prosecutor may have thrown out, okay, it's for the sake of good storytelling, good action sequences. So the 90s, again, like I said, moderate budget movies, right? They weren't put out to really make a whole lot of money for like the studio. It was pretty much, we put it out, this will let us make 2 more. All right. Broken Arrow was not put out to be a blockbuster. Like blockbusters, this was put out to like, all right, let's get a good return on investment and invest it in something else. So to the amount that the studio got involved in it, I don't know. I can't find much information on it. It has to be an assumption, and it's a powerful assumption. What we do know about the movie is you understand where the characters are, right? You understand what their goals are. It's got a 3-act structure that comes in at under 2 hours. The movie itself, maybe a solid 7. Even if it's only a 6.5, is still pretty good, knowing that it's going to set up Face Off. And now you're saying, I can't believe how bad this movie was John Woo's mindset. Well, we can't get into that mindset. We don't know. The way I look at it then, if I may take the same swing you did, is he's like, man, I'd really like another shot at that 6.57 film I did. I think I have some ideas. And now with people calling out and saying, hey, as much as we, found the movie to be passable entertainment, you really got to let John Woo do his own thing. And I don't think that happens without a movie that people find interesting, entertaining, and at least somewhat good, because if it's been truly terrible, there'd be nobody asking for him to follow it up at all. So I think it's safe to say that this movie occupies a space, between kind of like The Rock and Eraser, not as bad as Eraser, not as serious as The Rock. And it's just fun, cheesy action movies. The movie may not be perfect, but it is certainly appreciated. And as I already said, if anyone...
Wait a minute, you think this is better than Eraser?
I don't know when the last time you saw Eraser is, but that movie's got problems.
How dare you?
I don't think it's a bad movie. I just don't think it's as good as Broken.
We needed Howie Long with 2 railguns.
Yeah.
That's what we needed.
And again, if I can repeat something I said earlier.
You may not. Let's move on.
Shut up!
I'm sorry.
You may. The whole thing that I've been thinking about movies lately, would I watch it again? And as we discussed, if a friend of mine asked to watch it, which happened, I said, yes. My dad.
Oh.
And finally, someone we can all agree with. Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Maynard Bangs, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, and Mr. I'm the Man, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Right this way. For me, John Travolta comes first. Christian Slater.
That was excellent.
Oh, Ben.
Too clever for the bailiff. That was the bailiff.
They can't see you when you yell at that camera.
Oh no!
They know if,
Oh no! I've been yelling at it the whole time, making all
Will
sorts of
Grumbly
faces.
be gracing us?
No, I don't got any grumblies. I'm
Look at
sorry.
that! Look at that scar.
Oh, whoa.
It looks wicked. That's why I don't wear hats.
You got how about a Ben Travolta?
It's got to be Ben Travolta, right?
Yeah, I'll find something.
Nick Ben or
Benstrin Slater.
Chris Ben Slater.
Chris Benoit.
Okay, gentlemen, what are we thinking? Ben, I want to hear from you.
This was kind of an odd one because whenever each juror or each lawyer was talking, I kind of agreed with the side that they weren't representing. No, that's wrong. No, I don't like that. The Newt going off in the desert is heading to Denver. No, I don't like that. The boxing payoff, you're saying that's a positive? No, I hated that. That was so phoned in. So I'm not quite sure where I land. For me, this film was like a 2.5. I'll have to mull it over as
Out of 5 or out of 10?
Out of 5. I do not care for it. Sorry. Yeah, gentleman's 5. I would not watch this again. If someone begged me to watch it again, I would. John Travolta's fun, I guess. That's about it. I don't know.
You sound really committed to this. Why don't you keep on going with that?
It doesn't fall on its face. I mean, that's something.
It doesn't fall on its face off.
Ooh.
Sorry, guys. I was just in the bathroom. What'd that guy say about doing to that other guy's face?
Okay, so Ben finds this to be a gentleman's 5. I will be more generous and give this a gentleman's 6. It took about half an hour for me to actually get into the film, but once it hooked me, it did not let go for the rest of the movie. And yes, thankfully, this movie is relatively short. That definitely works in its favor. But what I like about it is the fact that even if this is a compromised John Woo movie, John Woo, at every stage of his career, knows spatial geography. He knows how to stage a sequence and have you not be confused by what's going on with cross-cutting or with
what about that grenade,
changes.
Ryan? Was there 2 grenades?
I have no idea. Oh my god, I
I have
can
no
barely
idea
remember
either.
the fact that
One
I
of those
watched
grenades
this
came
movie.
from the grassy knoll.
But I mean, I enjoyed this movie. The one thing that stuck with me for the first half hour, though, is I was looking at Samantha Mathis and going, so what happened there? I remember when everybody said she was going to be the next big thing, and then literally Super Mario Brothers happens, and then immediately people are like, nope, never mind.
That's what
We
happened.
were wrong.
That's what happened.
Rob, what are you thinking?
I found this to be a very satisfying action movie as far as scratching all the itches. Christian Slater is there's a lot of better choices they could have made, but he's got enough charisma that he makes like a good a good foil to Travolta because he's lame. Like Travolta's the super cool villain, and here's Christian Slater. He's kind of lame. He wants to be like Travolta, but he's just not cool enough. The action I think is all pretty satisfying. I think that the mine stuff is not that interesting, but the train is really good. So the train does a lot of heavy lifting there in the end for when the action needs to come. And you kind of remember the last thing that happened. And for me, it was the train. As far as Face Off, I don't know if he learned lessons that, I don't know which way to put that. It reminds me of like a Wish.com Face Off. And to me, that's not bad. Like I get a little Face Off rub off on, on the Travolta character. There's enough there where I go, oh, if I just watched Face Off, I could see following up with Broken Arrow again. I could see watching this movie again when I was in that mood.
And I got to say, this has one of the greatest dummy deaths of all time. That practical dummy of Travolta flying out of the train when he gets hit with a nuclear missile. Oh my God, all-timer.
Smile at it.
Loved it. God, I love that scene. Okay, let's start locking things in. Ben, I want to hear. I think I know which way you're leaning, but I want to hear a confirmation.
I think as far as what this film was trying to do, and for the audience that still enjoys it to this day, it does hit those marks. I'm just not one of those people. It is Diet Don Air. It is Diet The Rock. But some people like diet soda, so not guilty.
Rob?
Okay taste, less filling. I'm not risking this one into Ryan Luis Rodriguez. I'm not. I hope we go unanimous. Because I did not think Broken Arrow was so broken. I think Schlender was right about a lot of the stuff, but tended to be nitpicky, logical things within scenes. It didn't take down the whole movie for me. So I'm also gonna go not guilty.
Okay, guys, are you ready? You ready for this? Not guilty.
Unbelievable.
We got unanimous verdict, baby.
Wow,
yeah,
it doesn't
baby.
happen much, but I can't do it.
You want me to do mine again?
No!
Okay, guys, let's go tell that very handsome judge.
Looks great.
Judge, is it true we can see you on YouTube?
Oh, yes, but I'm not allowed to plug those sites here. Extra. Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus Broken Arrow, we somehow find the defendant not guilty of being a bad movie.
Excellent.
Oh, verdicts or something.
Verdict is therefore rendered. I hereby declare that John Woo, is he dead?
No, he's still good.
We'll make another face-off Broken Arrow crossover.
Yes.
Called Face Arrow. Broken Face.
Broken off.
Broken off! Court is adjourned.
This is Humbly Humblerson, the world's most benign journalist reporting from the reels of justice. Here comes Mr. Schlender. You won this case. A better performance I have not seen. Could I impose upon you, please, to give me a comment on the verdict?
Well, it was a tough case. I went in, I gave it everything I got. I really just feel bad for my movie. It's going to have to go home with, wait, what was that? Oh, we won! Oh, it was never in doubt. Yes, the movie's great, fantastic. As a matter of fact, as long as there are no more follow-up questions, I'm going to go cash this check right now.
Oh, I am not worthy of such fine comments, sir. 1,000 gratitudes to you. And here comes the other Mr. Schlender, no less handsome, no less splendiferous. I hate to burden upon you, but could I get a comment on that verdict?
Well, humbly, and I gotta say, I like you a lot. It's just so much nicer than the usual court reporters.
Notice how he didn't call me handsome.
He said just as handsome. The place are handsome too. Well, look,
Hey.
it was a good case. This is a great movie for the reels of justice, where I think people need to kind of reevaluate, go back and look at it. Because you know who hated this movie? Ebert. So that just should tell you everything you need to know right there. And it's always so much fun having my brother on the show, and I'm glad we were able to go head to head. Well, man, you're on the show every week, and it's not fun. I'll talk to you guys later.
Well, you spending time with me is an honor I do not deserve, so let us kick it back to the studio for post-trial analysis.
Do not let Ryan find out about this Humbly thing.
Humbly
It
is great.
extremely legit.
He is intellectually distinct.
It's going to be like that scene in Futurama. I made my own Humbly.
Well, I think this might be the first time since Hudson Hawk where all of the Reels boys are in agreement, because I don't think this movie's guilty either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was its Rotten Tomatoes?
It was
40?
like it's like 40, 60. It's in our wheelhouse for sure.
The movie, like I said earlier, is not well received.
Critically panned.
Yeah.
The only movie Ebert convinced Siskel to change a thumbs up to a thumbs down to in their entire career.
Yeah.
But Ebert's such a hack. He pointed out all the obvious stuff for why you should like. He's like, oh, it just follows all the tropes. It's like, oh, shut up, Ebert. You freaking.
That's what you said.
Oh, it was a good point for the case.
But that's why 90s action films are so loved, is they have those tropes and they stick to them.
Right.
So it's an itch to scratch.
No, I would
That's
argue.
fun.
I guess Broken Arrow just doesn't execute as well as some of the other movies we talked about, but it does so much right.
Face Off and The Rock is like
That's
peak
tough.
of the peak.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they're not that far apart.
I was walking around my house doing Sean Connery impression from The Rock all day for no reason.
I do it every time somebody says I'm trying my best.
Your best.
I know, I shouldn't say that.
I just keep saying welcome to The Rock for I don't know why. Just got it stuck in my head and on loop. Well, fantastic. So, D-Rok, what keeps you busy when you're not putting movies on trial and defending them? What do you do? Your life.
I sit at home in my room and cry in the dark. No follow-up questions.
You too?
You guys have so much in common.
I put out videos on my YouTube channel, the Schlender 5 Productions. We just recently started firing back up Trailer Trashed, so there should be quite a handful of them out by the time this comes out. A few of my reviews have done pretty well lately. I think Godzilla X Kong is sitting at around 700 as of filming. For some reason, my review of the Norwegian film Troll is at like 35,000. I think people confuse it with Justin Timberlake, and I'm not going to correct them.
Yeah, well,
so
works out in your favor.
on that, we just got high-speed internet. I hope to do a little bit more like online gaming more effectively, more efficiently. I don't know. I don't got a lot going on.
Sure you do.
It's the YouTube channel,
Yeah.
Schlender 5 Productions.
Schlender 5 Productions.
Yeah, go check it out. We got some good stuff, and if you don't like that, I got some crap in the back.
There's a great backlog of trailer trash too. And
see,
you're in some of those.
I am.
Watch our immaculate video.
That's right. I mean, if for some reason you don't hate our personalities, you get more of it there. So if you're not sick of them.
I actually watched our Creed 3 trailer trash where I do the whole thing as Sly Stallone. That's a lot
Black
of fun.
Cougar.
Yeah.
You know, I was in a movie called Black Cougar.
Great. So we always ask for recommendations from our guests for movies that you think people should see. So what is a movie you think people should see?
I think people should see the John Woo film A Better Tomorrow. It is an excellent gangster film about like two brothers on opposite sides of the law. It's fantastic, and it's most notable for kind of setting like the format down for like what would be called heroic bloodshed movies. And if you like, you know, gangster dramas, and it's a little bit more grounded for a John Woo movie too. But if you like, you know, the idea of two brothers fighting with each other,
I do.
A Better Tomorrow is a pretty good version of it.
Yep. All right, cool. Do you have a similar or themed recommendation?
Well, I'm recommending A Better Tomorrow 2.
You mean as well?
No, A Better Tomorrow 2, the sequel. John Woo and Chow Yun-fat are back in the action is better than ever. A direct sequel to A Better Tomorrow. We pick up with our hero getting out of prison. Team-ups and shootouts ensue, and this movie resulted in Woo breaking up with longtime partner Sui Hark, leading to a bountiful feast of action movies from Woo, including today's discussed feature. Woo's Hong Kong work scratches an action itch you may not even know you've had. I told you, man, cream just won't do it. So,
I know I have that itch.
as much as I love American gangsters, give me the Hong Kong Mafia any day of the week. A Better Tomorrow might be streaming on Apple TV. I don't know. Googling it was very confusing.
It was.
This is one that is almost certainly worth purchasing. Ryan, tell me it's out on the Criterion Collection.
Nope.
No.
Wow. What an
Can't be that
oversight
good.
for Fancy Tubi.
I don't even think they have the trilogy out on any of it.
Jeez.
Other Woo films are, but not
My God, what a shame. I mean, Hard Boiled's probably on.
Well, if the split with the producers, probably why they can't get the rights locked down.
You know, that's a good point. That's a good point. Hey, Maynard, you are our judgment. What is your recommendation today?
Big Ben is wanting me to get out of the house more and actually go out to the theaters to see stuff. And
Did
so
call you out
I
very
have
specifically.
so I've got a certain bar that needs to be met. So I recently trudged out and I saw Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. And if you want mindless, stupid action, this is really the peak. There's barely any human story, and honestly, like, non-verbal characters are really the main characters, like King Kong, which is cool though, because I mean, it's all facial emotion, and so it's almost back to a silent film era where these monsters are communicating entirely through these verbal facial cues. It's if you hate the Marvel movies that are all CGI, you'll probably hate this. It's absolutely all CGI. It's basically like the Showa era come to life. So a complete left from the Godzilla -1 sort of direction. This is going, no, screw you. We're doing like Transformers Rise of the Beasts again with Godzilla and Kong. And you know what? It's fun. It's fun. It's mindless. The stakes are low and stupid. And if the audiences are going to love it. I mean, if that's what you want, go in wanting that and you'll have a blast. Absolutely.
But -1's better, right?
I don't think so.
Say it.
No.
Are we gonna have this?
No. I mean, it would take an hour for those tugboats to turn around. I mean, easy. At least an hour to turn around and tie out of the boat.
Oh yeah, as opposed to like this jet that just camouflages as at will. What was that about?
The other movie doesn't care at all. That's the difference. So Big Ben, what do you got? You think you're so great?
I'm also going Wook, and will Wook him in John's first triumphant return to Hong Kong, and say you should check out Redcliffe. And unfortunately, in the school system, when I grew up, the real history of Asian culture wasn't really touched upon until the white people showed up. There might be a chapter about China, about having firecrackers or crickets or Great Walls before Marco Polo came into the picture, but it's only really then that the school book started to keep track of the dates and the rulers and everything that was involved there. I learned all about the fascinating history of Qin Shi Huang and the Han Dynasty and the Three Kingdoms period after leaving the school system. And it's a shame because these stories and their history are so unique and fascinating and written down. I don't know as much about it as I should, and I'm so hungry to learn more, which is why I like films like Redcliffe are worth checking out. Redcliffe is about the end of the Han Dynasty and the setting up that Three Kingdoms period, featuring prominent figures in Chinese history such as Cao Cao, Sun Quan, Liu Bei. I butchered those names, I'm quite sure. The movie is about
number 5 guy.
A little bit of
Don't listen to him, folks. Don't listen to him. The movie is about half truth, half fiction, but the fiction really leans more towards fantasy, with huge, incredible battles, martial arts, and comedy. There are actually a few versions of the film out there, the original being a 2-part film series, but it has been edited down into a single cut for international audiences as well. I'd recommend either version, but the international cut is certainly a little easier to find. Either way, if historic intrigue is something that you want, I spent a lot of time learning about Japan, but lately I've been feeling China deserves a lot more of my attention.
Now, Ben, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I heard you correct. Did you say the international one is the unedited one? Because I think it is.
That's the edited one.
The international is the edited one? Because I have the Blu-ray that has both discs.
It's half as long. It's half as long in one.
The 5-hour, almost 6-hour epic. Phenomenal.
That's
choice.
the 2. Okay, yeah, that's the
2-disc one. That one's phenomenal.
But could those myths actually be based on events that really happened?
Yes.
Ancient astronaut theorists suggest.
Oh no, man! Brian, send us on home, please. What's your recommendation?
My recommendation this week is a recent release that has nothing to do with anything: the directorial debut of Charlotte Wells' 2022's After Sun. Hey, you know how I'm terrible at giving plot synopses? Dig this. A divorced dad, played by Paul Mescal, takes his 11-year-old daughter on vacation to a resort in Turkey. The film follows the young girl as she interacts with the locals and her fellow travelers and records the entire stay on video for posterity. That's it. Like most films I recommend on this podcast, it's less about story and more about incident and moments and textures. It's deeply human and profoundly affecting, and I suspect that certain images will linger with me for years to come. I am astounded by Wells's directorial prowess, specifically the way that she and cinematographer Gregory Oak let the camera linger, always roving and finding moments that feel captured. I feel like I know these characters by the time the 2 hours are up, and that must be treasured. After Sun is currently streaming on Showtime on Paramount Plus.
And how many ice dragons are in this movie?
7.
Now I'm in.
Sounds like it's going to end up on Tubi in no time.
How does this compare to the director's cut of Booty Call? Which I also found the camera to linger quite a bit in that movie.
Which I also could afford. With that, we are all out of show. But we want to thank our guest, D-Rok Schlender, for joining us. Thank you so much, D-Rok. That's you.
Oh,
You say you're welcome and you're happy to be.
Say it was
You're
an
welcome.
honor.
it was
It was an
quite
honor.
mandated.
You begged us.
Oh, please. I've never begged anything except for this show to end. Come on.
I know women that would tell me the opposite. And with that, folks, we're all out of show, but we hope you'll join us again next time as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Dummy death!
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.